Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, this is the last time I get to do this for a while, and some of you may be rejoicing. As you know, this week I actually went down on Thursday to begin my next year of school. So I'm not sure when I will be back here, October, November, sometime. So I'm privileged to be able to be here, and we thank Pastor Eva for joining us today. Throughout my career, I have had the luck, the joy, the burden of working in a bunch of different industries. One of the first ones was I worked as a service technician, going into machine shops and installing equipment. And then after that, I spent some time as a pipe organ builder. And I would go around to churches and tune them and build them and put them in place. And I loved that job. And then I transitioned into the world that I just left, which was the software industry. And my first job was in software for car dealerships, automotive dealerships. Now, one of the things that I noticed in these different places is that when I was in the midst of them, I would notice more about that industry. When I was a service technician for machine shops, I'd drive around and say, oh, look, there's another machine shop. It might be on this out-of-the-way road, but I could see it. When I got into pipe organ building, I all of a sudden noticed how many churches there were in our community. Oh, look, there's a church. I tuned that one. Oh, there's one. I wonder what kind of organ they have in there. And then when I was in the automotive dealership industry, I started noticing all of these dealerships. That was mine. I know Morelli Hoskins, I know that one. Kennedy Ford, I know them. But it was an awareness that I hadn't had before. And that kind of thing happened to me as I was looking at this reading from today, from Paul's letter to the Romans. The first few times that I read it, I noticed all of the words that talked about our broken world. Can I be forgiven for thinking about this first? We have a media, in the internet, in television, in newspapers that always seem to show these stories of bad things, of evil things, of things about our broken world. They assault us. And that seems to be what we notice first, and we might come to think that our world is a terrible place to be in. It's a world where we encounter hate and injustice, a place where whole groups of people are degraded and left suffering, a world that's rife with poverty and crime. It's a world that we encounter all manners of evil. And unfortunately, when we experience this constant barrage of stories that highlight the bad, our minds sometimes become conditioned to see that evil in everything around us. Its prevalence is amplified. And I admit that when I first read this letter to the Romans, I was going to talk about the poor, about evil, about God's vengeance, about repaying evil with evil. Sometimes it's easy to speak about those things that are all around us. But this heightened awareness can create its own narrative in our minds. It traps us. It can create this spiraling vortex that leads us deeper and deeper, and we see it more and more. So it seems like a logical thing to think about, to discuss. And then I read it again, and I read it again, and I realized that the most important part of this passage was right at the beginning. Those first 8 verses are full of words that say, love, rejoice, hope, and bless. Now, in our translation of the New Testament, we sometimes miss the very strong statements that Paul is making, because the way it's constructed and the grammar used, these statements are not meant to be passive. They are constructed with imperatives, with feeling, and with focus. If we were to read this in the English like the Greek construction, it would be more like love genuinely, rejoice in hope, bless others, rejoice with others. It is really Paul's exhortation of how to live a Christian life. That first verse, let love be genuine. Hate what is evil, but hold fast to what is good. Whatever else comes after, the first thing that we need to remember to do is love. It starts with that charge. Yes, we have to hate what is evil, and we need to be on guard for it. But first and foremost, love. Imagine that word with a few extra exclamation points following. Hold on to the good. Don't let the bad things take away or blot out or mess with, diminish or compromise all that is good. Don't let evil overcome us by forgetting to love. It is what we are compelled to do as followers of a God who first loved us. In fact, it should be our default position with everything, everywhere. This week has been remarkable, and this love-first approach was on display in the midst of the tragedy that happened in Texas and Louisiana. And if all we did was concentrate on the devastation of life and property from Hurricane Harvey, we might miss the incredible acts of love from so many people. People do not put themselves in harm's way to rescue another because of evil. They don't bring their own boats and drive into the midst of a flood to save others because of evil. People don't wade through chest-high water attached to a rope to rescue somebody on the top of a car because evil compelled them to do it. People don't open their homes to complete strangers because evil was pushing them along. Evil doesn't act like this. Evil can't act like this. No, we're not naive, and we're not blind, because we also did hear stories of looters. But overwhelmingly, the positive stories, the heroic stories have been on display. Evil tried to overcome, but evil failed, because evil cannot overcome love. This is the same love that created this world in the beauty of holiness. This is the same love that we heard about in the Old Testament, that heard the cries of a people enslaved and oppressed, and sent somebody in the midst of them to deliver them. This is the same love that no matter how many times the Jews of the Old Testament or we today turn our back to God, this is the same love that provides that path back to God. This is the same love that others tried to kill but could not. That's the love that willingly stayed on the cross for us, for you, for me, for everyone, everywhere, in every time. And as we go out this week, my prayer and my hope is that we remember that we are loved and that we are called to love. Remember that we are loved not only by those people in this church or our friends, our family, relatives, people that we encounter on a daily basis, but by our Creator, then my hope is that we can consciously look and see the evidence of that love in this world. If we need to, maybe we should take a little notepad or a piece of paper with us. And when we see love, write it down. So that when we experience those moments and that onslaught of negative and bad things, we can pull it out and we can remember and refocus. We can do what Jesus did in the gospel message today and rebuke evil and put it behind him. Get behind me and be love first. We need to keep on guard for the evil that exists in the world. But we need to consciously choose to put that behind rejoicing and blessing others. Choose to make our default entry into the world with our arms open instead of closed, with our hearts open instead of closed. Maybe by doing this and taking this approach, we can change that internal narrative that assaults us and that traps us in that vortex of bad things. Maybe we can then consciously see the good and the beautiful and the grace and the love. It may seem trite. It may seem to be an easy thing to talk about within these walls. But I believe more than ever, we need to be reminded that there is love in this world. It is in the midst of our sanctuary. It exists in the community's response to tragedy. It also exists in the smile of a stranger, the helping hand of someone who holds you up and keeps you from falling. It exists in the communion that we share as the body of the church. Pure love through sacrifice called us worthy and made us worthy. Don't let evil overcome that ever. Remember, Paul was adamant. Paul added those exclamation points. Love, rejoice, bless.